Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? So Kiper's mock draft, 2-round mock. No surprise with the LSU guys. He's got Jaden Daniels going to Washington. He's got Malik Neighbors going 6 to the Giants. Those are pretty commonly where all of these guys are mocked. And quite honestly, there's not a lot of surprises with what Mel Kiper has in his mock draft. And the thing that I am prayerfully hoping for in this draft is that the Saints have an opportunity to draft Olu Fashanu out of Penn State at number 14 overall, and that is where Mel Kiper has the Saints going. One of the things about Dennis Allen over these past 2 years in the draft that's been maybe a bit of a change from Sean Payton's tenure is it's been pretty easy to identify what the Saints' needs are in a given year, and they go address them. When 2 years ago, we all knew they needed receiver help, and they drafted Chris Olave. He was the guy that was tied to the Saints early. They picked him. They also needed help at tackle because you saw Teron Armstead leaving free agency, and they drafted Trevor Penning. Now, they didn't hit on Penning. They hit on Olave. They didn't hit on Penning, but they went receiver, offensive tackle. A year ago, we all knew they needed defensive line help. Brian Brzee was a very commonly mocked player to New Orleans. They took him. We knew they needed help on the edges after losing Trey Hendrickson. They took Isaiah Foskey with an early round 2 pick. We knew last year, everyone talked about running back. They're going to take a running back. A lot of people thought it would be Tajay Spears from Tulane. It ended up being Kendre Miller from TCU. The needs for this team seem pretty obvious to identify, and at least in the past 2 drafts with Dennis Allen, they've stayed true to drafting that way. So when you look at this team, the most obvious needs right now are offensive tackle because you have an uncertain future with Ramczyk, and you don't have a left tackle. You drafted Trevor Penning to be that guy. It hasn't worked out. You had Hurst and Pete there last year. Hurst took a pay cut to stay. Pete's a free agent right now, so you need a left tackle. You got to. I guess you could run it back with Penning and see, but you don't even have an option there right now. So that's your most gigantic need. That's very likely what they're going to do at 14 or trade up if there's someone they absolutely fall in love with to get that player. For me, I'll say it again, I think a best-case scenario for New Orleans in this draft, best case, is they stay at 14 and Olu Fashanu is there out of Penn State. That's a guy who a year ago, had he come out, a lot of people projected would have been a top 10 pick, maybe the number 1 tackle in the draft. And if that's a guy that's sitting there for you at 14, that feels like a gigantic win. I'll say it again, it's like he just happens to be in a draft that's tackle heavy, where you've got Joe Alt and J.C. Latham and Fotanu out of Washington and Fuaga out of Oregon State. It's all the guys with F's in their last name. Fashanu, Fuaga, Fotanu. We'll get them all. But it's a deep tackle draft. I say the comp is Brian Thomas. If Brian Thomas was in last year's draft, he's a top 10 pick. He's just in a draft where in this mock that Mel Kiper's put out, he's got 10 wide receivers going in the first 39 picks. 10 out of the first 39 picks. You didn't have a wide receiver come off the board until the end of round 1 last year. So this just happens to be a draft where the Saints' 2 biggest needs are offensive tackle and wide receiver. And the 2 deepest positions, maybe outside of quarterback, the 2 deepest positions in this draft are offensive tackle and receiver. So it's no surprise that at 45, Kiper's mocking a receiver to New Orleans, and it's the guy we talked about earlier this week who the Saints brought in for a top 30 visit, and it's Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. And it makes a lot of sense because Malachi Corley is a slot receiver. You're losing Michael Thomas. He's physically a different player. He's 5'10", whereas Thomas is 6'3". But he's a slot receiver, fits that mold, and is a guy that a lot of teams really like. Whatever the case may be, however it plays out, I think this much is true. If the Saints stay at 14, there's going to be an elite offensive tackle there for them. And if they stay at 45, there's going to be an elite wide receiver. They're going to get value at their two biggest need spots in this draft if they just stay put at 14 and 45. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.